Assalamu alaikum, and welcome to another episode of The Chocolate Shake. Inshallah, today I'd like to deal with the B-1 crowd, those persons who say that we have to forward being Black American ahead of everything else, that this should be our major consideration and everything else needs to wait. As believing people, those of us who call ourselves Muslim, Christian, Jews, Jainists, Confucius, Taoists, Hindus, Buddhists, whatever your bag is, how are we to deal with the B-1 crowd? And can we accept this philosophy as something that's valid? Is this valid for the believing people? Well, yours truly is saying, no, it's not valid. We can't say that we should put Black first, although we totally understand where our brothers and sisters are coming from who believe in this B-1 philosophy. What they're meaning to say is that because Black Americans have been kicked in the dust so long, and we've had nothing but a hard time in the Western world, hey, really a hard time all over the planet, right? But we're just specifically talking about the tribe of people who call themselves Black American, African American, American African, Negroes, coloreds, and a whole host of other names we've been calling ourselves, and other names that we're now Moors and everything else I'm starting to hear, right? I'm talking about this particular tribe that was a part of the chattel slavery system in America and the descendants of those people. Some people are now calling us ADOS, right? American descendants of slaves, etc. I'm talking about those people. So what they're saying is that we have to consider ourselves first above and beyond anything else, because we have always been put in the back. We've always been told to wait. You know, anything that we have to do for ourselves to better ourselves, as our nation and the people who live here as Americans have always told us we didn't matter, right? We could just be kicked to the dirt. We are truly the mudsills of this society. Black Americans are truly the mudsills of the society. People have come to this country who had nothing but the shirts on their backs, and in little to no time, they were able to push themselves into the working class and maybe into the lower middle class and maybe right into the solid middle class, right? In no time flat. And they were able to do that despite the fact that Black Americans are probably still the hardest working Americans. How is it that this could be possible? And it's only possible because of a political and economic system that has been developed through years, through hundreds of years, to benefit a certain type of human being. And those of us who were the descendants of the people who actually built this country, those enslaved Africans, then the system has a way of trapping us and keeping us in the bottom of the socio-economic and political scheme of things. It's real. We do have a machine that's systemic with its racism, it's systemic with its classism, it's systemic with its terrible economic policies, and all of these things that have been charged against the Black American. All these things have been designed to, quote unquote, keep us in our places. It's just the way the system is. And yours truly don't believe that this will actually ever change. I believe history tells us that the mudsills of a society, they never evolve in that society to become respected peoples. They remain mudsills until the end of that society, until it falls. That's the way it is. Go back and check history, and you'll never see where mudsills raise to the top of a society. The only way that happens is if they have help from outsiders, or the system itself is now in decline. It's falling. And while it's in decline, the people who are rebelling against that system, they may have an opportunity within that decline to go ahead and run for it, and maybe in that way come to some type of power. But outside of that, when the system is built the way it is, it's built to last that way. It's built to stay that way. That's what I believe about it. So I don't believe that black Americans will ever, en masse, do well in this country. I don't believe it. Yeah, we will always be trapped in the bottom of this country until Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decide to snatch it down, or something happens so drastic to this nation that they actually need black Americans to help perpetuate whatever their interests are, which is basically what we've been doing. And this is where the B-1 crowd comes in, and this is where they're making their mark. They're saying, we're tired of that, and we want to make sure that our interests as black Americans are pushed to the forefront. So we believe in people, we get it, right? We Muslim brothers and sisters, Christian brothers and sisters, we get it. But it's not congruent with our philosophy as believers. So what does the Sheikh mean by that? What I'm saying is, if we believe in a creator who gave his great divines, the great prophets, the sages, this way of life that's righteous, then we have to walk away from philosophies that are designed to say that a particular ethnic group, a particular color, skin color of people or persons is what should be their focal point. That's not the focus of the believing people. Our focus is on ethics and morality. That's what our focus is on. So for us, the way that you become the best, and how is it that you earn your liberation? How do I get to the point where I pull myself up and I earn my liberation, right? We have to do this through our ethics. We have to do this through our morality. So this is not going to fit square with the B-1 crowd. Race is something that basically was created. Basically, and I know there are some arguments about this that are probably would date back historically further than what I'm about to touch on. But I want to talk about race in the modern worldview. This ideal of race, blacks, whites, yellows, reds, browns, etc. All of this came at about the 1600s, maybe the 1500s, right? But definitely by 1619 in America, we start to see laws and we start to see things get codified by way of quote unquote race. Now, when we look back to see why this was codified, why was it that people who looked different, who had different skin hues, why are we now being designated as white or black or other? This is all from the oligarchs and the landowners. This is a scheme that they came up with the politicians and those people who are supposed to be physiologists and people who study the body. These are their machinations. These are things that they came up with to control populations. This was one way that oligarchs kept the working class whites in America in line to do their bidding, to basically make them slaves and serfs too. But you couldn't call your white brother your slave. You couldn't outright call him a serf because, after all, democracy was supposed to bring about this freedom through economics called capitalism. So the democracy and the capitalism supposed to go hand in hand to free a society. So you can't call people all out of Europe and empty out the European ghettos, have all these people fleeing to the New World, that is America, or Australia, or New Zealand, and all the other places where the Europeans ran to, and then tell people once they're there that, hey, you're my slave, you're my serf, when the people just ran from that. That's what they're running from out of Europe. So, of course, now here comes the ideal of democracy, and democracy is now linked up with capitalism, and you're supposed to have the ability to go to these new worlds and then get a little plot of land, get you some tools, and build out a good life for yourself and your wife and your children. This was the idea. Now, you can't tell people who traveled all those miles to get to places like America, New Zealand, Australia, that you're still a slave. And at the same time, you're pulling Africans all out of Africa and you're sending them into the Western world to do your work with your white brother right there looking on. So people have enough sense to say, wait a minute, I have more in common. These poor Europeans who left those countries, they have enough sense to say I have more in common with these Africans than I do these oligarchs who might be from my same tribe, or they might be from my same quote unquote race, or they might be from the same place that I come from. They're from Britain, France, Italy. They're from Ireland, etc. But they're treating me poorly. They're treating me just the way they're treating these Africans. So the oligarchs, along with the politicians, they got together and made a scheme after what we call the Bacon's Rebellion here in America. The Bacon's Rebellion was working class and poor white people who locked up arm in arm with Africans, the enslaved Africans, as well as the free Africans, and they raised up arms against the oligarchs in Virginia. This is what happened. These battles went on, maybe 1, 2, or 3 of them, and by the time it got to about the second or the third iteration, the oligarchs figured it out. We have to separate the white man from the black. We have to give them something or give them some type of philosophy, tell them some type of lie, or place some type of trick on them where they understand that, hey, you are not like these Africans. You're better than them. You're better than them. But based on what? Because we treat them just like we treat the Africans. This is the oligarchs speaking. We treat them just like we treat the African. So how are we going to convince these people that they're better than these Africans? Oh, we know how to do that. Skin color. We will create something that's called race. That's what we'll use. We'll use our sameness via tribe and skin color or nation we come from, and we'll use that as a way to use a wedge between the poor and working class white and the enslaved African. And that's what they did. And this is where we get, at least in modern times, our ideals of race. So why is it that now we are still following this paradigm? Why have we not changed the dynamic as people who are of African descent? And we see the game, we know the game. Why are we playing the same game that they laid down and by their rules? So we believing people, we believe you need to smash this into the dust. Kick it right to the curb, these ideals about race. After all, we know that they're different tribes. We know people are different. All you got to do is look at yourself and look at people from other places, and you see they're different. People from the north, they are lighter skinned, or what we call quote unquote white. They have straight hair, etc. And all that makes sense because of how it is they lived in those lands, how it is that the sun shine on, the types of foods they eat, the riverways, the waterways. All those things are different. And of course, if you are African of African descent, then you come from the southern tribes. Then we're going to look different, right? And in Africa, because Africa's so big, from West Africa to East Africa, the people are different. From North Africa to South Africa, the Africans are different. Don't even talk about the Asians, right? So that's a whole nother story where you have a whole nother look. People who have eyes that are slanted, right? They tend to be a little smaller. Likewise, straight hair, yellow skin. That's because of the way the sun shined on them and how it is that their geography affected them, right? We all evolved through time. And of course, we are knowing now that everybody comes out of Africa. So as the human being came out of Africa, he started to morph to be able to live in the conditions of where he sat in our geography. Common sense, right? So how is this going to be now used against us to say that it's almost as if the European peoples laid down a plan to say that, look, man, these people aren't even human. If you're not European or white, you're not even human. You're starting now to go to being a subhuman. And we know that's what they were saying. Nowadays, we should know better to even get into the back and forth about race this way and understand that there's no such thing as race. We can definitely accept the fact that there are different ethnic tribes. We have different ethnicities. We have different clans, and we have different nations. We understand all that. But to say that we are different races, it's almost to say that some of us may not even be Homo sapien. That's what it sounds like when it hit my ear. So it's time to change the language on this. And it's time for us not to fall for that. So this ideal of B-1 rests on an old philosophy that was erected by a bunch of oligarchical racists. That's all they were. A bunch of folks who wanted to control the Africans, and they wanted to control those poor European people who came here to America, New Zealand, Australia, etc., to try to, eke out a living the best they could. That's what that's about. It was a game that was run on the population, and it's a game they still run on us. So we push back against this ideal of black first. No, it's not black first. It's righteousness first. It's God first. And that's another thing. Amongst the B-1 crowd, I know there are a lot of believing people. I know there are people who believe in God and the great prophets like Jesus Christ and Prophet Muhammad, etc., because I listen to them, I hear them. But if you truly understand the message that comes from Allah and his messengers, then we can't get caught up in this type of foolishness. We have to have a vision that's more piercing to be able to see the machinations of the devils. Okay? So if we say we believe in God, then that means we believe in righteousness. And if you believe in righteousness, that's your code. There's no other code. That's another thing I hear. Be on code. Black folks need to get on code like the white folks. We need to get on code like the Asians. No, we don't. No, black folks need to get on God's code. We need to be on the code of morality. We need to be on code with ethics. And if you're on code with that, everything else is going to pan out just fine for you. Because that way now, black folks can tie ourselves in to other ethical people. So if the Iranian people are ethical, we can get down with them. And if the Koreans are ethical, then we can get down with them. And if there's some white Americans that are ethical, we can get down with them. So we can't go to people telling them that we're black first and everybody, they believe the same thing we believe, and we talk about black first. All we're going to do is hurt ourselves in numbers. We'll hurt the people who are the very people who can help us get out of the situation we're in. Again, coming from my faith tradition, Al-Islam, we're taught that people are different for that very reason. That people are different because we can learn from one another. People who come from different places in the world, they have their own benefits. They have their own talents. They have their own things to contribute to the world that are unique to them. And how can you benefit from them if you're talking about, I'm black first? That's almost like telling the other groups go to hell. You can't tell the people who could benefit you in your cause, which should be a righteous cause, right? Being upright and doing the right thing, being moral, being ethical. And then we all can jump on that bandwagon, and then we can go against these enemies. We can go against the oligarchs. We can go against these devils and put them in their place, snatch them right out of power, and do the things that are necessary to do to establish real justice on this earth. But we can't do that talking about black first, man. That's not the way. Can't be black first. We have to be God-fearing first. We have to be ethical and moral first. And then with that mighty sword, you could slash down the enemy and put yourself in a position where you need to be, where the people of God need to be. So this is my take on those who say B-1. No, we say, no, it's not black first. No, it's ethics first. It's morals first. And if the B-1 crowd can get down with that, then we can get down with them. And if they can't get down with that, and they're talking about a black code, or we need to be on code, then I would say, what code? Because being black is not a code. Being black, that's just skin color. What code? We're saying that being black, we're all one culture. We actually are all one culture. Is that what we're saying? That black Americans are all culturally in sync, because we know that's not true. We know that's not true. All we have to do is look at the crime in our communities and how it is that we deal with one another, and look at our own sicknesses and the things that, Allah willing, we will heal. These are things we will heal. We'll get through these things. But we're not going to get through these things talking about an imaginary black code, because there is no black code. The only code we have is the code that comes from Allah, the messengers, and the great sages. That's the code that I'm on. And that's a moral code. So this is the way that your dear Sheikh, and I believe the believing people, need to deal with the B-1 crowd. That needs to be checked. And that thing has to be further examined by those who are intelligent people. So don't just let somebody tell you out in these YouTube streets that you need to be on code, right? And that you need to put black first. No, we're not putting black first. We're putting righteousness first. And if black folks are righteous, then all right, then we can rock and roll. We are also told by Prophet Muhammad, as I close this out, that if you want to know who the persons amongst you who are superior, you want to know who those people are, who are the superior folk? He taught us that the superior folk are those people who obey Allah and who obey the messenger, and those people who are righteous. If you are righteous, then you're pious, then you are the superior man. So that's the measuring stick. That is the barometer. Alhamdulillah, all praise is due to Allah. That's my message for today. If you enjoyed this episode or you found it benefiting your life, please do me a favor and like it. And if you have not subscribed to my channel, please subscribe. This is the Chocolate Sheikh signing off. We love you. Peace.